Hey guys, welcome back to New World Carpentry Solutions. And in this series of videos, we're going to be making our own hand tool bench. It's going to be a combination of I believe Rex Kruger's minimal timber bench and maybe like a split top Rubo, because I am going to have a nice thick heavy top on it. The joinery, I was debating on whether I actually wanted to use some hand tool joinery. We very well might do a couple hand cut mortise and tenons. We'll see how the process goes as we get started. And the material of choice, actually, it's like his minimal timber bench with a large apron across the front with a thick top. So it's gonna be like a combination of both. I'm not gonna use a face vise or a leg vise, but I'm gonna use a standard, I believe it's like one of the Irwin quick release 10-inch vices. But I'm actually gonna have that line up with my large apron across the front. It's gonna have a tool well because it's gonna be sitting up against the wall. I'm gonna have a couple really cool features in it, and this is actually my first hand tool bench that I've ever made. So please be easy on me. Definitely, don't criticize too much. But let me show you guys the material that we're going to be using. So we're going to kind of zoom in. I'm going to show you guys why I'm going to process this from 2x12s and how I'm going to process it and pretty much all the reasons behind it. So let's zoom in a little bit. All right, so if you guys take a look at this one right here, when I was picking out the boards that I needed, I knew I needed probably about 5 to 6 feet of a 2x10 to make up. I believe I needed 10 foot in total. I need a full 10 foot 2x10 to make up the top for my workbench. I'm going to cut these a little bit longer than 5 foot because I plan to plane down and run things through the plane. So I want to avoid snipe, and I want to start with my material being a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is, out of these two 2x10s that have this really straight grain, I'm going to be able to get my top and my leg material, then my stretchers and everything else. Some of these 2x12s, the grain isn't as straight, and you can also see the amount of growth rings that we have going on here is significantly more than what we have here. This is all old growth. Well, not even old growth. I'm not going to say old growth because, 2x4s and 2x10s, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, completely different than this. But I can tell that this 2x12 came from an older tree than this. So this grain will be a lot more stable, especially with the grain that is running vertical like this. As you guys can see, this is almost going like straight vertical. So this is beautiful. This is exactly what we want. And this one down here is even better. This grain is really, really tight coming across this way. And then we see the pith that we don't want right here in the middle. Well, they're not always in the middle, depending on how large the tree was. But in this case, the pith is almost in the middle. And I plan to rip these to about 2 5/8 so I can get 4 pieces out of each. I was debating on making my top like 3.5 inches, but I'm planning to put stretchers in it, kind of like Rex's minimal timber bench. So I think with after milling and planing, after all the glue ups and everything else, hoping my top ends up at least 2 1/4, maybe a little bit thicker. So I think that on top of stretchers is gonna make a nice solid top, as long as the legs and everything else and all the stretchers, I think I'll give enough support to where I can actually chop and chisel on it. So with this, I'm able to get 4 pieces. 2 5/8 ends up being right here at 5 1/4. And we're missing that pith. And 5 1/4 from this way. So that heart center is essentially being cut out on this one board. So when I was picking out the boards that I wanted to use for this, I wanted to make sure I could find the best 2x12s I could in the batch. And this one is really, really tight, but this one's going to have a little bit of pith in it, but I could cut a piece out of here. I don't even think I'm going to break these pieces down. I'm just going to break down everything I need for the top. And, I might go ahead and break it all down tonight. I'm building some cabinets starting tomorrow, so probably a bad time for me to pick up all this material, partially why I'm tackling this at 9 o'clock at night again. But yeah, I'm going to at least break down all this material, probably get to my first few initial glue ups, do a little bit of planing tonight. That way, at least this whole entire workbench up front is cleared, so I can, kind of store all this material in the back as I start my cabinet builds in the front portion of the shop. And then after those cabinets are done, I can delve back into this workbench. But yeah, you guys get the gist. We're looking at grain orientation, which is also what led to the selection of these boards, and also is what's dictating throughout my entire milling process. So I want this bench to stay nice and flat as daily as long as possible. I'm not going to use a bunch of oak or maple or anything, but we're going to make this one look nice. So let's zoom back out. We're gonna head over to the table saw and miter saw and get to milling. Actually, before I take you guys out, let's zoom in some more and we'll kind of look at the boards. Like that grain on that one is really, really tight. But again, on this one, the pith kind of lands in the middle of one of those boards. I could take, 3 pieces out of that one, 4 out of that one, and then this side has a lot of really good grain, and then use that for my tabletops and then kind of rip up the rest of it however I see fit. I very well might do that. Might be the best, actually. Just to get the straightest grain and avoid that pith being in the center of any of the pivotal boards. But alright, let's switch over to the table saw and miter saw and get to the breaking down of all these boards. The first thing that I want to do before I actually get too far is break everything down to rough length. That way when I go through the table saw to kind of get straight edge and everything else on them, I'm not fighting really heavy boards. 2, when I go into the planing and milling process before I do any of the glue ups, having shorter pieces makes me have to remove less material. Actually, yeah, this is a great example before I actually go into this. This board here has a decent cup in it. Straight edge piece of wood, one long enough. Got some feeler gauges. Let's just say this piece is straight. I'm not sure how straight this piece of wood is, but let's say we sit that up there. You can take this feeler gauge. It's pushing the 2x4 on that end. It's pushing the 2x4 on that end. We'll come right here in the middle. That's a gap. Let's just put like 3 or 4 of these together. Still sliding underneath. So yeah, essentially all I'm trying to show is that this board has a cup in it. And if I cut this board, let's say here, when I go through the planer, I'm not milling through a large cup in the board. So essentially by breaking the boards down strategically, I can save as much material as possible. So we are going to select through the boards. I believe, yeah, after talking through it, 4 pieces, 3 pieces out of this one. Then I'll pull 1 off of this edge, and that'll be my top material. And I'll probably just break the rest of this down to rough lengths. Don't plane or glue any of this up. I'm just gonna get everything I need for the tops and the legs and get those glued up, because those are gonna be all the thicker pieces. All right, on to the miter saw. All right, we're over here at the miter saw, and one thing that you guys can see, I believe it's this board. Actually, no, it's this board right here. This is that first one that I showed you guys that had the really good grain down at that end, but as you got over here to this side, the pith was more this way. So again, it says at the center of the tree kind of runs down off at an angle. So I'm looking at, well, I'll figure out once I actually get through these first 2, but I probably can. I'm looking at, like, I want a 5-foot bench, so I'm probably gonna cut these pieces to like 68, maybe 69. Might just go even 70 inches. That way I know any planer snipe or anything, in glue up, I can still cut down and get to my final dimension of 5 foot. So if I can cut this to 70 inches and the pith, or I can tell it, where the center's running. If the center's about centered here, I can actually get my piece out of this one. I can get 4 out of the bottom one, 4 out of the middle one, and then still get my other 2 from right here on this corner. And I'll just end up, you guys will see how I cut them. Pretty much I'll select which side actually is giving me the best grain, and then I'll pull my 70 inches from that section. And on this board, this end has the best. Let's pull the miter saw up so it clears the bathroom. Also need to close the door. So this one needs to be spun around. then we want 70 inches from this side. That all the 70-inch pieces will make up my top. These should be what? I have a 10-footer, 70 inches, 50. Yeah, these 50-inch pieces will make up my legs. It's gonna be like a 36-inch tall bench. So I actually, if I do that math right, 3-inch top, that's like 33-inch legs. So I'm gonna have cut off. Probably. After all the milling process, we'll see how much we have. The legs are going to be double layered, so I'm going to glue 2 pieces together to make the full thickness for the legs. Some of these might be long enough for the runners because I only need 4 pieces and I can get 4 out of, I need 8 pieces for the legs and I have a third cut off. So the third 50-inch cutoff might end up doing the stretchers that run back this way for the short sides to connect those legs. So this probably won't get glued up, but this will probably get ripped down to like I might go full 3 inches on this and just get 3 of them, or I might just go the same 2 5/8 and do horizontal. Well, no, I'll do 4 so that way I can do top and bottom. So yeah, this will make up the stretchers that connect the 2 sides. I have enough material for the top with a little bit left over. This other 2x10, half of it is actually for the front and back large aprons. So I actually do need to cut another 70-inch piece and that'll be the apron material. This other 2x10 is for whatever stretchers and everything else I need. So I do want to cut this down. I might just go 70 inches as well because that'll make sure it's long enough for any parts or components, just so I'm not wrestling with larger material as I go through the planing and ripping process. So I'll probably actually cut all these to 70 inches because nothing is going to be longer than 70. Does that make sense? Does that work out? Yeah, 70, and then the apron pieces I can mill and get those straight before those will get installed afterwards. So yeah, 70 inches. I'm gonna cut these other 2 pieces to 70 inches, then we'll get over to the table saw, start ripping some of these down, and then everything I'm gonna glue up to that tonight, I'm definitely gonna run through the planer just to make sure the face of it is nice and flat for a really good glue surface. Probably just 1 skin pass on both sides. And then I'm gonna get my top, it's gonna be about 12 inches wide, give or take, maybe 13, 14 inches. And I want to, I'm going to do that in 2 separate glue ups. So I'm gonna do one section with 4 2x4s, the other section with 4 2x4s. Then after I get that situated, I'm going to plane and mill those back flat. Then I'm going to glue those back together. We'll glue those together to make up my solid top piece. Then go back through the planer one more time to make sure the top is perfectly flat. So it's gonna be a little bit of time for acclimation and drying because I'm also gonna be building a cabinet for a client. So kind of in between those processes, I will be building this workbench. Again, kind of started at a bad time, but it's all good. Something that the shop needed. I'm trying to get everything completed before I do this tour for you guys. And I want this hand tool bench. I really want to do this radial arm saw as well and have that completed. Or not even completed, but functional. Just like the drill press stand and everything else that we did. I like to have the shop completely set up, lights up and everything else. Show you guys kind of what we're working with here at NWCS and where we're trying to go. But let's continue on with this workbench build. 70 inches on these other 2 pieces. Alright, I want to keep these 2, well, these 4 pieces separated. So I'm probably going to be ripping this stack tonight, doing all the planing and everything else on it. These pieces I'll kind of determine sizes and everything else after I have the top made up and start making the legs. I guess I could go ahead and at least rip them tonight, but I still want to keep them separated because I know this is going to be for my top and legs. I might go ahead and rip. No, because of the apron. I'm not planning all this tonight. Decisions. We'll make that after we get through the table sawing portion. So let's actually pan the camera around so you guys can see that angle. Then we're going to reposition all the wood over on the table saw so we can continue. Alright, so the first step before I go to ripping all this stuff down, I need to set my blade properly. And I'm looking at 2 5/8. But first thing I need to do is make sure my blade, she actually looks like she's about ready to be cleaned too. She's been through quite a bit. Yeah, the first thing I need to do is make sure the blade is set to 0. Turn it on. 0 it out. And then stick it to the blade. She is saying that she is 0.2 degrees. And that right there is 0. Lock that in. This has served its purpose. Let's set our depth for this 1.5 inch material. And I've said in a few other videos on how I like to set my depth and why. We're going to go to where 1 gullet clears the material. The height of 1 gullet. That way you can carry sawdust away properly. Blade is set. Now let's set the fence to 2 5/8. I would use my reader right here, but all the wood right here is kind of covering it. So we're just going to scooch the fence over to 2 5/8, and since most of these, the ones that I'm about to rip now, have the pith in the center, I am going to rip 2 rips, flip the board over, rip 2 more rips. I'm not too much worried about this rounded edge. I'm not going to rip all those off first, for the simple fact that after I get everything glued up, the whole entire assembly is going through the planer, and I'm pretty sure I'll be planing down through that rounded edge. So no need to spend extra time taking care of that now. And to the tooth, 2 5/8. Turn. I just want to take a second to show you guys that's the pith right there. That's the center of the board. Probably easier to see over on this side. That right there is dead center of the tree. So by doing this process, we end up milling out the center. But also, while I'm thinking, and after getting these ripped down, I think this is going to be plenty thick, you know, for a top, for chopping and chiseling and everything else. But I don't think this is going to be beefy enough for my legs. You know, 2 5/8. After everything gets milled down, they'll be nice and thick this way. They'll be like a full 3 inches. But I think width-wise, I don't think this is going to be thick enough to make me feel comfortable. So these are going to end up being stretcher pieces. I'm gonna go ahead and rip this last one to the right size. But yeah, these are gonna be stretchers. And then what I'm gonna do is with these other two pieces, since I need 8, if I do 3 inches, well, I can't get. So I'll probably do. Yeah, I'll probably rip into like 3.5 out of these two pieces with the straight grain. See how, let's see, 3.5, 9, 10. It's 10.5. I should be able to get 3. 1/8 inch curved blade, 2 rips. Yeah, I should be able to get 3. So I'm going to rip these down to get 3.5 inch pieces. Then rip one more out of that other piece over there. And then that will be my legs. These will end up being stretchers. And the other ones will be aprons and stretchers. Let me rip this last one down. And what I'm going to do to keep from switching my fence over, I'm going to rip this last piece and I'm going to move this stack over and then rip all the bench top pieces. And just like that, it was pretty easy to get all the parts milled up for the top. It's going to be roughly about 12 inches wide with a tool tray behind it. So if you guys have enjoyed this process and want to see more, definitely let me know down below. Leave me a like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.